Everyone in my family thinks I cut my mother out because of money. The truth is, it was never about the money. It was about the night she raised her hand against me in public. I've been with my husband Blake, 30, for 6 years now, and we're just 2 months away from meeting our very first child. You'd think this would be the happiest time of our lives, but his sister, Gertrude, 34, has made everything feel like a storm cloud hanging over us. Before I even tell you what happened at my baby shower last weekend, I need you to understand exactly who Gertrude is. Because trust me, it'll all make sense. Gertrude never married, never had kids, and lives with their mom about half an hour away from us. On the surface, she's just a quirky, slightly restless person. But in reality, she's intense. I mean, when Blake and I first started dating, she used to call him constantly, sometimes multiple times in a single day, demanding to know where he was, who he was with, what he was doing. At first, I thought maybe she was just a protective older sister. Blake explained that after their dad walked out when he was 12 and she was 16, she basically stepped into the parent role while their mom worked 2 jobs. I get it. That must have been hard. But the problem is, she never let go. Now, Gertrude works as a bookkeeper, but she's always chasing these little, dream businesses. One month she's into handmade jewelry, the next she wants a food truck, and then suddenly she's opening a pet grooming service. None of them stick. She loses interest before anything gets off the ground. And of course, Blake's the one she turns to when she's short on cash. He's lent her money more times than I can count, 500 here, 1,000 there. Promises to pay him back? Never kept. But things really went downhill when we got engaged. She wanted her hands in everything. And I mean everything. The venue, the food, even my dress. When I didn't take her advice, she accused me of turning Blake against his family. She showed up uninvited to my bridal shower and threw a fit when she realized she wasn't a bridesmaid. At our actual wedding, she stood up and gave this long, unplanned speech about how she's always been the most important woman in Blake's life and how our bond could never break theirs. 10 minutes of that in front of all our guests. Can you imagine? Blake confronted her later, but she just brushed it off, like nothing happened. Fast forward to 4 months ago when we announced I was pregnant. That's when things took a sharp turn into something even more unsettling. Gertrude started showing up with bags and bags of baby things, clothes that weren't even the right sizes, random toys, mismatched furniture. She bought formula and bottles after I'd already told her we planned to breastfeed. And every time she dropped something off, she'd talk like it was a given that she'd be babysitting our child, regularly. But here's the thing, we never asked her to babysit. Blake and I had already agreed my mom, who's retired and lives nearby, would be our main support. Gertrude just decided she'd be a caregiver, like she had some kind of automatic right to that role. 3 weeks ago, she called Blake and insisted she wanted to plan my baby shower. Sweet idea, except, my sister Amy and my mother-in-law had already arranged everything. Venue booked, invitation sent, decorations ordered. When Blake told her, she went off, claimed I was excluding her from another family milestone. Blake tried to keep the peace and offered that she could help with setup. She agreed, but you could feel the bitterness in her voice. Now here's where things went off the rails. The shower was set for Sunday noon start. By 11 o'clock, the place looked beautiful, catered food, games ready, decorations perfectly arranged. At 10:30 sharp, Gertrude barges in carrying boxes of her own decorations. She starts moving tables, swapping out centerpieces, acting like she's in charge. Amy politely told her to check with me first, but Gertrude just waved her off, claiming she was making it perfect. Oh, and she brought her own cake too, even though Amy had already ordered one. When guests began to arrive, Gertrude stationed herself at the entrance like she was the hostess. She was greeting people, directing them where to sit, even pulling out her own guest book. People were whispering, asking if she was co-hosting, because it was that confusing. But the gift opening, that's when things spiraled. Gertrude shoved her giant wrapped box in front of me and insisted I open it first. Inside? A $300 car seat. And yeah, we needed one, except my parents had already bought us the exact model we'd chosen, after coordinating with us weeks earlier. I smiled and thanked her, but explained we already had one. Her face fell, and she snapped that she'd spent weeks researching the safest option. Then, in front of everyone, she starts talking about how she can't wait to take the baby places, and how she's already setting up a nursery in her house. A crib, a changing table, the whole deal. She even listed days of the week when she'd be available to babysit and asked me to consider her schedule when booking doctor appointments. People were shifting in their seats. The air was heavy, awkward. My sister tried to steer the conversation away, but Gertrude wouldn't stop. She went on about the delivery, how she planned to be in the waiting room, how she expected to hold the baby right after birth. She had already taken time off work for my due date. That was the line for me. Blake and I had been clear, we wanted privacy. Just our parents visiting in those first days. When I reminded her of this, she looked like I'd slapped her. She started crying, accusing me of shutting her out. She said I was destroying family bonds, and even claimed this baby would be like her own grandchild. The room went silent. Guests were staring. Some started quietly leaving. Blake tried calming her down, but she kept ramping up, throwing the past in my face, saying I'd excluded her from the wedding too. Eventually, Blake had to tell her flat out to leave. She froze, stunned, then spat out that I was changing him, grabbed her stuff, and stormed out. But before she left, she turned back and said, "This isn't over." The party limped on after that, but the mood was wrecked. Once everyone left, Blake and I sat down and really talked. He admitted he hadn't realized just how much she was making me feel cornered, but agreed we needed to set boundaries before the baby comes. And yet, since that day, Gertrude has been bombarding us with calls and texts. Long messages about how hurt she is, how unfair we're being. She's even pulled their mom into it, who's trying to play mediator but doesn't fully understand why we're so upset. Gertrude keeps insisting she just wants to be a good aunt. But at this point, I can't shake the feeling she's trying to claim my baby as her own. It's been a little while since I first shared what was happening with my sister-in-law, and honestly, things have gone from bad to worse. I thought the baby shower incident was the peak of her behavior, but no. Gertrude somehow managed to push things even further. After my last post, Blake sat her down for another talk. He tried to be calm, clear, and fair. He told her we wanted her in the baby's life, but that there had to be limits. No overnight stays, no assuming she was the default babysitter, no trying to take over decisions that weren't hers. And the wild part? She nodded along. She acted like she understood. She even said she respected our boundaries. But actions speak louder than words. 2 days later, there she was on our porch with more baby supplies. This time it was a bassinet she claimed she couldn't pass up because it was on sale. I reminded her, gently, that we already had one. She waved me off, saying we could just keep hers at her place for when the baby visited. Then she walked right into the nursery, started moving around furniture I had already arranged, and even pulled out a tape measure. I asked what she was doing, and she told me, so casually, that she wanted to set up her own nursery at her house, identical to ours. She'd already ordered paint in the exact shade of our nursery walls. My stomach dropped. And then it got worse. The following week, I got a call from my doctor's office. The receptionist told me that Gertrude had been calling them multiple times, claiming to be the baby's aunt and demanding to know my due date, my delivery plan, even which hospital I'd chosen. I had to lock down my file, making it crystal clear that no one besides Blake and my emergency contacts could access anything. When Gertrude found out, she sobbed to Blake on the phone, saying we were treating her like a stranger. She actually said, word for word, that she saw herself as a second mother to my child and deserved to be informed. I thought that was the breaking point. But I was wrong. Gertrude started pulling in the rest of the family, calling Blake's mom, his aunt, his cousin, anyone who would listen, telling them I was trying to cut her out of important family milestones. Blake spent hours on the phone explaining over and over that we weren't excluding her, just asking for basic boundaries. But the damage was done. Suddenly, we were fielding calls from confused relatives asking what was going on. And then, the most chilling thing happened. 2 weeks ago, Gertrude showed up at my job. I work as a dental hygienist. She made an appointment under a fake name, specifically requested me, and sat down in my chair like she was a stranger. The moment I started the exam, she dropped the act and began asking questions about my pregnancy. What hospital was I delivering at? Did I have a pediatrician yet? Was I planning on pain medication? I froze. My heart was pounding so loud I could barely hear her. When I demanded to know why she was doing this, she said, completely serious, that she wanted backup plans in case Blake didn't call her when I went into labor. She told me she'd been losing sleep worrying she'd miss the birth. I kicked her out of the office. I was shaking so badly I had to step into the break room just to breathe. The moment she walked out the door, I called Blake. He was horrified. That night, he called Gertrude and laid down the law. No more showing up at my workplace, no more dragging the family into our private business, no more crossing lines. Her response? A massive email. Pages long. She said we were punishing her for loving the baby too much. She admitted she had been planning for months to help raise our child. And then, this part made my blood run cold, she revealed she'd been researching legal options. She'd spoken to a lawyer about grandparents' rights. And when she realized aunts don't have any legal standing, she still wrote that she wanted to understand her options if we kept excluding her. That was Blake's breaking point. He told her flat out that if she even hinted at legal action again, she'd leave us no choice but to cut contact completely. She lost it. She screamed that Blake was choosing me over his real family. She said she sacrificed her youth raising him, and this was how he repaid her? She accused me of manipulating him, of destroying their bond. She hung up on him, then called back again and again. The voicemails were unhinged, swinging from crying apologies to furious accusations, promising she'd never let me destroy their family. And still, she hasn't stopped. Now she's running to Janet, their mom, every single day. She cries to her, begging her to intervene. She's roped in cousins, uncles, anyone who will listen. Some relatives think we're being too harsh. Others are starting to see just how inappropriate she's being. Janet keeps telling us Gertrude's just excited and that we should sit down and work out a compromise. But how do you compromise on this? How do you compromise with someone who thinks she deserves my private medical information? Someone who thinks she gets a vote in parenting decisions? I'm 37 weeks pregnant now. My doctor has already warned me I need to cut down on stress, but that's nearly impossible when I'm constantly looking over my shoulder, wondering what stunt Gertrude will pull next. Blake and I have decided we won't tell anyone but our parents when I go into labor. We've informed the hospital that Gertrude is not allowed to receive updates, not even if she shows up claiming to be family. And yet, I can't shake this dread. Because if she's willing to show up at my workplace under a fake name, what's she going to do once the baby is here? 6 weeks ago, I finally became a mom. Our daughter Emma came into the world healthy, safe, and perfect. The delivery went smoothly, and for those first quiet hours in the hospital, Blake and I actually got to breathe. We prepared the staff for Gertrude's antics, and they were phenomenal, protective, professional, and firm about respecting our privacy. For once, I thought, maybe we could just enjoy this moment without her chaos. We didn't blast the news online. No Instagram posts, no Facebook announcements. We just wanted to savor those first few days with our tiny newborn. We told only our parents and my sister Amy, making it clear that we weren't ready for visitors. But then, Janet slipped. She told Gertrude. She swore later that she thought we only meant no social media posts. She never realized we meant keep Gertrude out of the loop. And that one mistake? It set off a chain reaction I'll never forget. Just 4 hours after Emma's birth, Gertrude stormed into the hospital. She came armed with balloons, flowers, and a massive gift bag, like she was marching into a birthday party. She tried charming the nurses into giving up my room number, insisting, I'm the baby's aunt, of course I'm allowed in. But we'd already filed restrictions. The nurses refused. And that's when Gertrude unraveled. She cried, argued, raised her voice. She told other families in the waiting area that her own brother was keeping her away from her niece. Security had to escort her out. Imagine being just hours post-labor and hearing from hospital staff that your sister-in-law caused a scene bad enough to disturb strangers in the maternity ward. When Blake heard what happened, he called his mom immediately. He was furious. Janet was apologetic, saying she didn't think Gertrude would show up so soon. But Blake knew, we both knew, this was just the beginning. 2 days later, we came home from the hospital. Exhausted. Emma fussing softly in her car seat. I was sore, running on maybe 2 hours of broken sleep, just wanting to collapse into my own bed. And who was sitting in our driveway? Gertrude. Our neighbor later told us she'd been parked there for hours, waiting. As soon as Blake unbuckled Emma's seat, Gertrude rushed over. Her eyes were wide, almost manic. She begged to hold Emma, claiming she'd waited long enough. Blake tried to defuse things, telling her it wasn't the right time. But Gertrude wouldn't let up. She said she'd been patient for months, that she deserved to meet Emma. Emma started wailing, tiny cries filling the night air, and Gertrude only got more desperate. She insisted she'd just hold her for a minute. Blake told her firmly, no. That's when Gertrude's voice broke. She accused Blake of letting me control him, of keeping family away, of trampling her rights as an aunt. Then, it happened. Gertrude reached for the car seat. She tried pulling it out of Blake's hands. My heart stopped, my body went cold. Blake yanked it back immediately, shielding Emma, but the shouting got loud enough that our neighbor called the police. 2 cruisers rolled up. Lights flashing. Officers stepping out, calm but firm. They told Gertrude she had to leave. She cried, tried to plead her case, said she was only trying to see her niece. But the officers didn't waver. They escorted her back to her car and made sure she drove away. That night, Blake called her. His voice was shaking with controlled anger. He told her point blank, trying to take Emma, showing up uninvited, ambushing us, it was unacceptable. Until she respected boundaries, she wasn't welcome. Her response? Not remorse. Not reflection. Instead, she launched a campaign. She called every relative she could think of, spinning the story into some melodrama where I was the villain. She told them we were keeping Emma from the entire family, that I was manipulating Blake, that she was being punished for loving too much. Within days, our phones were blowing up. Cousins, uncles, even distant relatives Blake barely speaks to were calling, confused. Blake had to walk each one through months of Gertrude's obsessive behavior. Most understood. Some didn't. But the damage was done. And then, she crossed another line. Gertrude started posting Emma's pictures online. Photos she'd gotten from Janet. She plastered them across Facebook with captions like, my beautiful niece Emma, and, so lucky to be her aunt. Her friends were commenting, asking when they could meet Emma, and Gertrude replied as if she babysat regularly. As if she had a role she didn't. When Blake confronted her, she flat out refused to take the posts down. She said she had a right to show off her niece. It took threats of reporting her to Facebook before she finally removed them, but the resentment in her voice was chilling. The final straw? Last week. Emma had a pediatrician appointment. Nothing unusual. Just a checkup and vaccinations. But when we pulled into the parking lot, there she was, Gertrude. She walked up like nothing was wrong, asking if she could come inside with us. Blake shut it down immediately, telling her no. That's when she said something that made my skin crawl. She told us she'd been studying infant development and had questions for the doctor about Emma's care. She actually believed she had a say in our daughter's medical decisions. The office staff had to call security again. Gertrude cried, begged, swore she just wanted to make sure Emma was healthy. But she was escorted out, humiliated, while I sat inside holding my screaming baby through her first vaccinations, my hands trembling with rage and fear. That was it. Blake and I finally contacted a lawyer. We've been documenting everything, every unannounced visit, every social media stunt, every scene she's caused. The lawyer confirmed what we already knew. Gertrude has no legal rights here. But her behavior? It's escalating to harassment. He recommended we send her a formal cease and desist letter. If she keeps this up, we'll pursue a restraining order. Blake is heartbroken. This is his sister. The girl who helped raise him. He still loves her, but he's starting to see what I've seen all along, that her obsession isn't normal. It's dangerous. And Janet? She still doesn't get it. She keeps saying Gertrude is just excited and that we should show patience. But patience doesn't cover trespassing, medical interference, or trying to snatch a newborn from her father's arms. Now, I'm here. 6 weeks postpartum. I should be soaking up every second with Emma. Instead, I'm exhausted, constantly on edge, looking over my shoulder. Blake and I agreed we won't attend any family gatherings if Gertrude is there. We can't risk it. I never imagined motherhood would look like this, balancing night feedings, diaper changes, and police reports. And deep down, I can't shake the question, what happens the next time Gertrude decides she's entitled to my daughter? Emma is 4 months old now. For months of first smiles, sleepless nights, and tiny milestones that make your heart swell. But alongside all that joy, has been Gertrude. And this will be the last time I update you about her. After my last post, Blake and I had hoped things might settle down. We had the lawyer send Gertrude a formal letter, laying everything out in black and white: respect our privacy, stop showing up uninvited, stop inserting yourself into decisions that weren't yours. Simple. Clear. But instead of backing off, she doubled down. 3 weeks later, at 6 in the morning, there was a knock on our door. Blake opened it to find Gertrude on the porch, disheveled, sobbing, saying she hadn't slept all night because she was thinking about Emma. Her voice cracked as she begged us to let her in, insisting she only wanted to be a good aunt. Blake tried, once again, to be calm. He told her no one was trying to be cruel, but we were parents now, and she needed to respect that. Her response? A meltdown. She wailed that she had planned to help raise Emma for months, and now we were destroying her dreams. For half an hour they went in circles, Gertrude insisting on her so-called rights as an aunt, Blake repeating that she had none. Finally, she stormed off. But she didn't stay gone for long. That same day, she came back. And this time she brought Janet. Janet, who had been trying to mediate for months, looked more exasperated than ever. She stood in our living room and told us point blank, Gertrude was family, and we needed to find a way to include her. Her solution? A weekly visiting schedule. At first, it sounded almost reasonable, until Gertrude jumped in. She immediately demanded overnights. Said Emma needed to get used to the nursery she'd set up at her house. She wanted to decide Emma's feeding schedule, her naps, even weigh in on her medical care. When we told her absolutely not, her face twisted in anger. She spat that we were treating her like a stranger, and started citing articles she'd read on child development, as if her Google searches outweighed our choices as parents. And then things got darker. Gertrude started following us. Not just popping by, but trailing us around town. She showed up at the grocery store, at the park, lingering just close enough to make her presence known. The worst was at a restaurant where we were meeting my parents for lunch. She sat at a table across from us, her eyes glued to Emma. My father politely asked her to leave. She refused. It's a public place, she said coldly, I have every right to be here. And then she pulled out her phone. She started taking photos of Emma. Dozens. When we confronted her, she just smiled through tears and said she had to capture memories since we wouldn't let her spend time with her niece. That was the moment Blake and I knew this wasn't going to stop on its own. We gathered every piece of evidence: the hospital incident, the driveway confrontation, the pediatrician ambush, the stalking, the photos. We handed it all to our lawyer. And finally, a restraining order was granted. 500 feet. That's how far she has to stay away from us, from Emma, from our home, from our work. No contact. No loopholes. When she found out, Gertrude completely unraveled. She called Blake screaming, crying, saying we had destroyed the family. She claimed she'd done nothing wrong. She accused me, again, of manipulating him, of ripping apart the bond they once had. Janet was furious, too. She couldn't wrap her head around why we'd involved the courts. She begged us to just talk it out. But talking had been our first 10 tries. And look where that got us. Now the family is split down the middle. Some relatives support us, finally seeing her obsession for what it is. Others whisper that we overreacted, that we should have been more patient. Rebecca, Blake's aunt, has been the loudest critic, saying Gertrude has always been emotional, and that we owed her more grace because of how she helped raise Blake. That's weighed heavily on him. He loves his sister. He always has. He never wanted it to come to this. He's even in counseling now, trying to work through the grief of losing the relationship he thought they'd always have. And yet, Gertrude still tries to find cracks. She's been sending gifts through Janet, writing letters to Emma for when she's older. We had to tell Janet to stop. To not deliver gifts, to not act as a messenger. Janet broke down, saying we were forcing her to choose between her children and her granddaughter. It was brutal. But it was necessary. For the past month, things have finally been quiet. No unannounced visits. No lurking in parking lots. No photos taken from across the room. The restraining order holds, and for the first time since I got pregnant, I can breathe. The scars are still there, though. Family dinners are off the table. Gatherings are complicated. Some bridges may never be rebuilt. But Blake and I have chosen peace. Emma's peace. Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Emma is thriving. She's strong, curious, hitting her milestones. She smiles when she sees us, laughs when we play peekaboo, clings to us when she's tired. She is safe. And she is loved. We can't control Gertrude. We can't fix her. All we can do is protect our daughter, our home, and our happiness. And if that means hard choices, strained family ties, and legal battles, then so be it. Because being parents means putting Emma first. Always. I never thought I'd be sitting here, questioning whether protecting my daughter's future makes me the villain in my own home. But that's where I am. I'm 42, married to my wife, Pamela, who's 39. We've been together 6 years. We each came into the marriage with one child, my daughter, Dorothy, now 17, and her son, Ethan, 19. And from the very first month of Dorothy's life, I made myself a promise: she was never going to face the same struggles I did. See, I grew up in a family where money was always tight. My parents worked themselves into the ground, but there was never enough. So when Dorothy was born, even though her mom and I weren't married and I was barely scraping by on an entry-level job, I opened a college savings account for her. Back then, it wasn't much. Sometimes $20, sometimes just the coins from my tip jar at the bar where I picked up extra shifts. But every single month, something went in. And as she grew, I let her in on it. We'd sit together at the kitchen table, counting tips, rolling change, talking about dreams and education. It wasn't just money, it was a ritual. It was hope in a jar. By the time Dorothy hit her teens, that fund had become something real. Something substantial. When I met Pamela, I told her about it. She was impressed. She also told me about her own money troubles, how her ex had left her with piles of debt, how finances scared her. Because of that, we kept our accounts separate. Honestly, I thought that was fair. Her son, Ethan, was 13 when we got married. A good kid. Quiet. More bonded to his dad than to me. And I accepted that. I never tried to force the dad role. More like, the steady adult in the background. The one clapping from the bleachers, offering advice when asked. But one thing always stuck out, Pamela never really saved for him. She had the income. She's a real estate agent and does well. But her money always seemed to go toward the next vacation, new clothes, redecorating projects. Whenever I gently brought up Ethan's future, she'd wave it off. There's time, she'd say. Fast forward to this year. Dorothy's senior year. She's been killing herself with AP classes, extracurriculars, volunteer work, the kind of student who makes you proud just by existing. And last week, we sat down together to look at her college fund. When she saw the number, her jaw dropped. Her eyes filled with tears. "Dad, is this real?" she whispered. And when I nodded, she broke down. She hugged me so tight I thought my ribs would crack. I cried too. All those years, all those shifts, all those nights falling asleep at the kitchen table with a calculator, worth it. Every cent. That night at dinner, still glowing from the moment, I told Pamela. I thought she'd be happy. Proud. But instead, her face hardened. "What about Ethan?" she asked. I blinked. "What do you mean?" She put down her fork, looked me straight in the eye, and said, "You should split that fund between both kids. It's only fair." My stomach dropped. I reminded her, calmly at first, that I started this fund when Dorothy was a month old. Before Pamela. Before Ethan. This was a promise I made to my daughter. But Pamela? She saw it differently. "So Ethan doesn't count? You don't see him as your child," she snapped. That's when the fight began. She accused me of favoritism, of setting Ethan up to fail. I pointed out that she'd had years to save and chose not to. We went in circles until Ethan walked in and overheard. And suddenly, it wasn't just a fight between me and Pamela. Ethan looked stricken. He said he'd always felt like I didn't see him as family, and this proved it. He stormed off before I could explain. Dorothy heard too. Later, she came to me crying, saying she'd split her fund with Ethan if it made things better. 17 years of sacrifice, and she was ready to give it up out of guilt. That broke me. I held her close and told her no. Absolutely not. This was hers. She earned it with her hard work, and I promised her from day one. Now the house feels like a war zone. Pamela gives me the cold shoulder, throwing barbed comments about my real family. Ethan won't look at me. Dorothy walks on eggshells. Pamela insists I'm cruel for not sharing. She says scholarships and community college aren't good enough for Ethan. Meanwhile, Ethan himself has said he's more interested in trade school. I'd support him in that heartbeat. But Pamela? She's fixated on this idea of a 4-year degree, paid for with Dorothy's money. And here I am. The man who worked 2 jobs, counted coins at the table, sacrificed vacations and nights out for nearly 2 decades. Now I'm being painted as the bad guy for refusing to split what was never meant to be split. So tell me, am I really the villain here? Am I wrong for protecting the future I built for my daughter? It's been a month since I first shared my story, and instead of things calming down, they've exploded in ways I never could have imagined. After that fight about Dorothy's college fund, the tension in our house was unbearable. Pamela and I barely spoke, just 2 strangers passing each other in the same space. Ethan avoided me completely, eyes down whenever I entered a room. And Dorothy? She walked on eggshells, stressed and trying to hold the peace, even though she shouldn't have to carry that burden. I kept trying to reach Pamela. To talk. To find common ground. I suggested we look into scholarships for Ethan, maybe financial aid, trade programs, community college. Anything that wouldn't touch the money I had spent 17 years scraping together for my daughter. But every conversation turned into a battle. She accused me of favoritism, I reminded her of the choices she made not to save. Round and round, no resolution. And then last week, I came home early. Dorothy wasn't home yet, and I thought I'd surprise her before her shift at the animal shelter. Instead, I walked into the kitchen, and froze. Pamela and Ethan were sitting at the table, papers spread out everywhere. When they saw me, they jumped like I'd caught them red-handed. And I had. Credit card applications. Personal loan paperwork. All in my name. My social, my details, my credit, they'd used it all. I felt the blood drain from my face. My own wife and stepson had gone behind my back and tried to commit financial fraud in my name, to fund Ethan's education. Pamela's defense? Desperate times call for desperate measures. She looked me straight in the eye and told me I had forced her hand by being selfish. Ethan sat there pale, ashamed, barely saying a word. I told her this was unacceptable. Illegal. Dangerous. That this could ruin not just my finances, but Dorothy's future too. And then I walked out. For a few days, I stayed at my brother's house. I needed space, time to think. And in that quiet, I replayed everything, all the red flags I had ignored. Pamela's impulsive spending. Her endless justifications for luxury purchases. The way she always brushed off saving for Ethan while resenting that I had saved for Dorothy. I thought back to those early days when we bonded over being single parents, both determined to give our kids better lives. I had admired her independence. But now, I saw the cracks I had refused to see. And I thought about Ethan. I do care about him. But I realized I'd been forcing a role neither of us wanted. He already has a father. I was never supposed to replace him. I should have been the mentor, the supporter, not the guy trying to paper over his mom's choices. When I went back home, I asked Pamela to sit down privately. My hands were shaking, but my decision was solid. I told her I wanted a divorce. Her reaction? First tears, then begging. She swore she only did it out of desperation. She begged me not to throw away our marriage. But I held firm. This wasn't about one mistake. It was about years of manipulation, of ignoring boundaries, of choosing the easy way out until it turned into fraud. I told her I couldn't stay married to someone I couldn't trust. She snapped. Accused me of never accepting Ethan, of always putting Dorothy first, of destroying our family over money. But it wasn't about the money. It was about trust. And trust was gone. Afterward, I sat Dorothy down. She cried, but she understood. She admitted she'd felt uncomfortable with Pamela's behavior for a while but hadn't wanted to make waves. I reassured her, this was not her fault. Her future was safe. Then I sat down with Ethan. That talk was harder. He apologized. Told me he felt pressured by his mom to go along with the credit card scheme. Then, for the first time, he admitted he didn't even want a 4-year college. He wanted to be an electrician. Trade school. Something practical. Something that actually fit him. I looked him in the eye and told him I thought that was a brilliant path. That I'd support him in it. Because that's what family is supposed to do, support, not manipulate. Now, I'm in the process of separating from Pamela. I'm staying at my brother's while we work through logistics. Dorothy is coming with me, of course. And Ethan? I've told him the door is open. If he wants me in his life, I'll be there. It's been one of the hardest, ugliest chapters of my life. But in the middle of the heartbreak, I finally see the truth. Sometimes the hardest choice is the only choice. And sometimes protecting your child, your promises, your integrity, means walking away from the person you thought would be your partner forever. I don't know exactly what the future looks like. But I know this, I'll keep showing up for my daughter. I'll keep supporting Ethan if he lets me. And I'll never again sacrifice my values for someone who doesn't respect them. Because this isn't just about money. It's about trust, love, and the kind of parent, the kind of man, I promised myself I would be. It's been 6 months since my last update, and in that time, my entire world has shifted. The divorce from Pamela was finalized just last month. It was draining, messy, and at times, gut-wrenching. But now that the dust has settled, I can finally breathe again. During the proceedings, a lot of truths came to light. One of the biggest shocks? Pamela had been drowning in debt for years. The designer clothes, the fancy vacations, the endless redecorating, it wasn't just overspending, it was a financial black hole she'd been hiding from me. Suddenly, it all made sense. Her desperation to get her hands on Dorothy's college fund wasn't about fairness. It was about survival. And I can't even describe the relief I felt knowing I'd stood my ground. That revelation stirred up memories I thought I'd buried, my own parents' struggles. I could hear the fights about overdue bills, remember the sting of shame when the lights were shut off. That's why I'd sworn Dorothy would never know that kind of insecurity. And sitting in that courtroom, it hit me, my instincts had been right all along. And speaking of Dorothy, she's thriving. She's officially a freshman at her dream university, majoring in marine biology. Every Sunday she calls me, her voice bubbling with stories about new friends, her part-time job at the campus aquarium, and even the struggles, like clashing with a roommate or the brutal pace of her biology courses. But she faces every hurdle with determination. I can't put into words how proud I am of her. All those nights of double shifts, all those years of saving instead of splurging, they were worth it. Ethan's story has been surprising too. Our relationship, against all odds, has grown stronger since the divorce. Without Pamela pushing me into the dad role, we found something more natural, mentor and mentee. He's been working at a local garage, taking classes at community college. Every couple of weeks, we grab lunch. He talks openly about his hopes and fears, and I help him plan, budget, and think ahead. We've been researching electrician apprenticeship programs together, and for the first time, I see real excitement in his eyes about his future. That means the world to me. Pamela, though. Pamela's been struggling. Downsized her life, juggling 2 jobs just to stay afloat. She's reached out to me a few times, sometimes apologizing, sometimes lashing out, always walking that line between remorse and resentment. The hardest moment came just last month. She showed up at my apartment unannounced, clearly drunk, sobbing and begging me to take her back. My heart ached seeing her like that, but I didn't waver. I called her sister to come get her. I hope she finds the help she needs, for Ethan's sake, if nothing else. As for me, I've started dipping my toes back into dating. Nothing serious yet. There's someone, Rachel, a woman I met at a local book club. We've been out a few times. She's kind, thoughtful, easy to talk to. But I'm cautious now. I know what's at stake. Dorothy is my priority. Always. I won't ever let anyone compromise her well-being or her future again. And through all of this, the kids, Dorothy and Ethan, they've kept a bond. Dorothy texted him while she was away at school. They even met for coffee when she came home for fall break. Seeing them support each other, despite everything that's happened between their parents, it warms my heart in ways I can't explain. Life now? It's quieter. Simpler. There are still hard days, still moments where the weight of the past presses on me. But I'm rebuilding. Rediscovering old hobbies, reconnecting with friends, focusing on the things that truly matter. If there's one lesson I've carried from all this, it's that love without trust will always collapse. Shared values aren't optional, they're the foundation. And protecting your child's future isn't selfish. It's sacred. As I watch Dorothy chase her dreams, as I see Ethan start to carve out his path, I'm grateful. Grateful that I trusted my instincts. Grateful that I held the line when it mattered most. And grateful that even after everything fell apart, the most important pieces of my life are still intact. Because in the end, this wasn't the story of a marriage destroyed by money. It's the story of a father who refused to compromise his daughter's future, no matter the cost.